There's a building in your city right now that never goes dark. Every other building around it, the office towers, the restaurants, the schools, the apartment blocks, they all surrender to the night eventually. Lights off, doors locked. The particular silence of a building that has finished its business for the day settling over them like a blanket. But not this one. This building glows at 3 a.m. with the same fluorescent intensity. It glows at 3 p.m. Its corridors are lit at midnight the way they are lit at noon. Its elevators run at 4 in the morning. Its parking lot has cars in it at every hour of every day of every year, without exception. The hospital never sleeps. And neither do the people who work in it after the rest of the world has gone to bed. Night shift hospital workers occupy a world that most people never see. The visitors go home at 8 p.m. The day staff clock out. The administrative offices empty. And then, in the specific, charged quiet that falls over a hospital after midnight, the night shift takes over. Nurses, orderlies, technicians, security guards, cleaning staff, the people who manage the building and the patients and the machines and the specific, relentless needs of human bodies that do not stop requiring care because the sun has gone down. These people spend more hours in hospitals at night than any other category of human being, and they see things, not the things that happen in the day, the surgeries, the diagnoses, the family conferences, the managed, observed, documented events of the medical daytime. The things that happen at night are different. They happen in the specific environment of a darkened ward, a long empty corridor, a room where a patient is sleeping or is not sleeping or is somewhere between the two. They happen in the hours when the hospital is at its most itself, stripped of performance of daytime medicine, reduced to its essential reality, which is a building full of sick and dying and recovering human beings, and the small number of people responsible for keeping them alive until morning. What happens in those hours, what the night shift workers see and hear and experience in hospitals after midnight, is the subject of everything that follows. I have spent months collecting these accounts, from nurses with 30 years of night shift behind them, from orderlies who have worked the same ward for a decade, from security guards who walk the same corridors at 2 a.m. every night of the week, from the people who know the hospital at night the way you know your own home. What they told me will not leave you quickly. Stay with me. The lights in this building stay on all night. But some of what happens, and it happens in the dark, before the stories. You need to understand what a hospital ward actually feels like after midnight, because the daytime hospital and the nighttime hospital are not the same place, not in atmosphere, not in sound, not in the specific quality of the air and the light, and the particular human experience of being there. During the day, a hospital is a busy, noisy, managed place. Visitors arrive with flowers and awkward conversations. Doctors make rounds with their clusters of medical students and their clipboards and their purposeful stride. The intercom calls names and room numbers. Meal trolleys rattle through corridors. The machinery of institutional medical care runs at full capacity and full volume. After midnight, almost all of that stops. The visitors are gone. The doctors are home or asleep in the on-call rooms. The administrative staff have been absent for hours. The cafeteria is closed. The corridors that were busy at noon are empty and long, and lit by the specific quality of hospital fluorescent light at night, slightly harsher than it seems in the daytime, slightly more relentless. The kind of light that shows you everything and flatters nothing. The sounds change. During the day, the hospital's ambient noise is varied enough that you stop registering it. At night, with the visitor noise and the administrative noise stripped away, what you are left with is the hospital's real soundtrack, the beeping of monitors, the specific rhythm of different machines, the ventilator's slow mechanical breath, the 4 pumps' occasional alert, the cardiac monitor's steady electronic heartbeat. These sounds, which exist all day, become enormous at night when there is less to compete with them. And between those mechanical sounds, something else. The sound that night shift workers learn to identify over months and years of work in the ward. The particular cry of a patient who is confused and frightened and does not know where they are. The quieter sound of a patient who is very sick and is not making noise at all. And a professional alarm that the absence of sound triggers in an experienced nurse. The sound of footsteps in a corridor that should be empty. The sound of a door opening in a room where nobody should be opening a door. Night shift hospital workers develop, over time, an extraordinarily sensitive awareness of the building sounds, because their job requires it, because the sounds are information, because a ward at night communicates through sound in ways that a daytime ward does not need to. And occasionally, in the specific charged silence of a hospital at 3 a.m., what the ward communicates is something that does not fit the medical framework, something that the night shift workers carry with them quietly for years, something that this is about. The most consistent category of account from hospital night shift workers involves patients. Specifically, patients who knew things they should not have known. This category appears across every type of hospital, every type of ward, every type of patient population. It is reported by nurses who describe themselves as deeply skeptical of anything outside the clinical framework. It is reported with the careful, precise language of medical professionals who are accustomed to observing and documenting and distinguishing between what is real and what is a symptom. And it is reported often enough, consistently enough, with enough corroborating detail that the medical community has, quietly, carefully, in the specific way that scientific communities acknowledge things that do not fit existing frameworks, begun to take it seriously. Margaret Sullivan has been a registered nurse for 28 years. She has worked night shifts in the ICU for 19 of those years. She is the kind of nurse that other nurses describe when they say they want to be the best at what they do. Methodical, observant, clinically precise. In 2014, she was caring for an elderly man. She calls him Mr. C in the account she has shared to protect his privacy, who had been admitted following a serious cardiac event. He was stable but critical. He was in his mid-80s. He was, by clinical assessment, unlikely to survive the week. On the third night of his admission, at approximately 2:30 in the morning, Mr. C woke up. He was fully alert, which was unusual given his condition and his medication. He looked at Margaret, and he said something that she has remembered word for word in the years since. He said, "My wife is here. She says it is almost time. She says to tell you thank you for being kind to me." His wife had died 11 years earlier. Margaret noted this in the clinical way. End-of-life visions are documented in the medical literature, are understood as a recognized phenomenon in palliative care. She noted it and she continued her observations. Mr. C died at 4:17 that morning. But this is the part that Margaret has difficulty explaining in clinical terms. At 2:30 in the morning, at the exact moment Mr. C told her his wife was there, the monitoring equipment in the adjacent room registered a brief, unexplained anomaly, a power fluctuation, a momentary irregularity in the electrical readings. The biomedical engineer who examined the equipment the following day found no explanation for the anomaly. It lasted approximately 40 seconds, the same duration as Mr. C's conversation about his wife. Margaret Sullivan does not claim to know what this means. She is a scientist and a clinician, and she does not make claims she cannot support with evidence. But she has told this story 3 times in 19 years of night shift nursing. And she tells it with the specific care of a person who knows exactly what she observed and is not willing to reduce it to something smaller than it was. Hospital security guards work a specific kind of alone, not the alone of the truck driver on an empty highway. That is alone with the whole world around you, dark and open. Hospital security alone is the alone of a building that is both full and empty simultaneously, full of patients who are sleeping or sedated or simply lying in the dark of their rooms, empty of the ambient human activity that makes a building feel inhabited. The corridors are the worst of it, or the most interesting of it, depending on the night shift security guard you ask. Long corridors, polished linoleum floors that reflect the fluorescent overhead lighting with a slightly distorted mirror quality, numbered doors on both sides. The ward station at the far end with its cluster of monitors and its single night nurse bent over paperwork. Hospital security guards walk these corridors all night, every night, for years, and some of them see things in those corridors that they do not put in their incident reports. Kevin Oladipo worked hospital security for 11 years at a large regional medical center in the Midwest. He is a large, calm man who speaks with the deliberate precision of someone who has spent years writing official reports and has learned to be careful about what language does to the truth of an observation. He saw the woman in the corridor for the first time in his 3rd year on the job. 3rd floor, West Wing, the oncology ward. 3:15 in the morning on a Tuesday in February. A woman in a hospital gown standing at the far end of the corridor, facing away from him, standing completely still. His first thought was clinical, a patient out of bed, disoriented, possibly a fall risk. He walked quickly toward her to assist. The corridor was approximately 60 yards long. He walked its entire length. She was not at the end. He checked every room on both sides of the corridor. Every room contained its patient, sleeping or resting, none of them the woman he had seen. None of the room doors showed evidence of recent movement. He walked back to his station. He wrote in his log, patient observed in corridor, unable to locate on subsequent check. He flagged it for the night nurse. The night nurse confirmed that all patients in the West Wing were accounted for and in their rooms. He saw the woman twice more in his 11 years. Same corridor, same time window, same gown, same stillness at the far end, and the same absence when he reached the place where she had been standing in his 11th year. He mentioned it to a nurse who had worked the oncology ward for 20 years. She looked at him with the specific expression of someone who has been waiting for a particular conversation. She said, "End of the corridor, facing away, hospital gown. Around 3 a.m. He said yes. She said, "How many times?" He said 3. She said, "I stopped counting after 8. He left hospital security at the end of that year, not because of the woman in the corridor." He says that clearly and directly, but he chose not to renew his contract either. Every hospital night shift worker has a room, not their room, the one on their ward that carries a specific quality, the one that other staff know about without having been told directly, the one that generates more call light activations at 3 a.m. than any other room on the floor, the one where patients complain about visitors who are not there and sounds that were not made in presences that the nursing staff cannot document or explain. Room numbers travel in the night shift community, the way the names of dangerous road stretches travel in the trucker community. Quietly, practically, as information rather than folklore. In a hospital in the Pacific Northwest, the room is 412. In a hospital in New England, it is room 7 in the East Wing of the psychiatric unit. In a large urban teaching hospital in the South, the cleaning staff have an unofficial policy, which is not official and is not documented, and which management would deny knowledge of about room 214. Nobody cleans it alone. Nobody cleans it before 6 a.m. Sarah Park worked the night shift at that Southern hospital for 7 years. She is a cleaning supervisor now. She was a cleaning staff member for the first 4 years of her tenure. On her 3rd night at the hospital, her supervisor assigned her to room 214 as part of the regular overnight cleaning rotation. Her supervisor did not mention anything about the room. Sarah went in at 2 a.m. with her cart. The room was empty, no patient admitted. Standard procedure for an empty room. Straightforward cleaning, nothing unusual. She was in the room for 4 minutes. She came out and did not go back in. When asked what happened in those 4 minutes, Sarah Park is precise and unembellished. She says, the television turned on by itself. She says, the bathroom door closed by itself. She says, she heard her name said once clearly from the direction of the bathroom. She says, she does not know whose voice it was, but it was not a voice she recognized. She says, she left the room. She told her supervisor the following morning. Her supervisor did not look surprised. Her supervisor said, put it down as completed and don't worry about it. Sarah found out later that room 214 had the highest rate of patient mortality on the floor, not because it was assigned the sickest patients. The assignments were rotational and random, but the patients who were admitted to 214 had a statistically higher rate of not leaving. This information is not in any official document. It is known among the staff. It is known. In a hospital, people die. This is not morbid. It is the reality of the building. People come to hospitals because they are sick, and some of the sick do not recover. And recovery's opposite happens in hospitals at a frequency that the rest of the world, the healthy, the daytime world, rarely thinks about. Night shift workers are present for more deaths than almost any other category of person, except perhaps combat medics. And some of the dying say, in the specific, altered state of the final hours, in the moments when the body is relinquishing its hold on consciousness, and what remains is something rawer and more essential. Some of what the dying say is extraordinary. This is documented. The medical literature on end-of-life experiences is extensive and taken seriously by palliative care specialists. Patients describing visits from deceased relatives. Patients describing a journey, a place, a sensation of movement or light. These accounts are too consistent and too widespread to be dismissed as simple hallucination. But what night shift workers describe is sometimes a step beyond the documented literature. It is the patient who delivers a message, not to a deceased relative, to a living person, to the nurse or orderly in the room. A specific message with specific content that could not have been known by the patient. James Whitmore is a palliative care nurse who has worked night shifts for 16 years. He has been present at more deaths than he has counted. He has heard last words from hundreds of patients. He has been given 3 messages, not vague, comforting statements. Specific messages with names and details that the dying patient could not have known through any ordinary means. The first, an elderly woman in her final hour asked James if he had spoken to his brother recently. James has a brother. The brother's name is David. The patient said David's name. She said that David needed to hear from him and that it was more important than James knew. James had not been in contact with David for over a year because of a family disagreement. He called David the following morning. David had been, for the 3 weeks prior to the call, in a mental health crisis that he had not told anyone in the family about. The phone call from James was the first contact David had with family during that period. David later said that call was significant in his decision to seek help. James does not know what to do with this information. He is a medical professional. He operates within a clinical framework. He does not have a framework for what that dying woman knew and how she knew it. He has 2 other accounts of similar nature that he does not share publicly because the content is too personal to the living people involved. He says, "I do not know what the dying know. I know that sometimes they know things, and I have stopped being surprised by it." Medical monitoring equipment is some of the most precisely calibrated technology in existence. The cardiac monitor, the pulse oximeter, the ventilator, the infusion pump. These are not consumer electronics that might glitch or behave unexpectedly. They are medical-grade instruments maintained and calibrated according to strict regulatory standards, checked regularly by biomedical engineering teams, designed to be as reliable as technology allows. They malfunction. Equipment malfunctions. This is understood and accounted for in hospital protocols. But the malfunctions that night shift workers describe, the specific category of equipment behavior that enters the informal, unwritten knowledge base of a night ward, are not the malfunctions that biomedical engineering can explain. The cardiac monitor that flatlines for 11 seconds and then resumes normal readings in a patient who remains clinically stable throughout, showing no physiological event that would explain a flatline, and whose subsequent examination reveals nothing wrong with either the patient or the equipment. The infusion pump that alarms at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night for a week in a specific room, whether or not that room contains a patient, whether or not the pump is connected to anything, and then stops the behavior as abruptly as it started. The call light that activates from a room where the patient has been discharged and the room has not yet been reassigned, and there is nobody in the room to activate it. These events are logged. Hospital documentation is extensive. The logs show the events. The biomedical engineers examine the equipment. They find nothing wrong. The events are classified as unexplained equipment anomalies and filed accordingly. And the night shift workers who witness them, who were standing in the corridor or at the nurse's station when the alarm sounded or the light activated, carry the specific knowledge of what they saw in a way that hospital night shift workers carry many things. Quietly, professionally, and with a particular form of acceptance that comes from working a night shift long enough to know that not everything that happens in a hospital after midnight fits the clinical framework. Now, we need to talk about the pediatric ward, because everything that happens in a hospital at night is amplified in the pediatric ward. Children who are sick are frightening in a way that sick adults are not, because the context is more wrong. Adults are supposed to age and weaken and eventually succumb. Children are not supposed to be in hospitals at all. Their presence there carries a weight that the medical staff feel and manage and process in their own way. And the pediatric ward at night, with smaller beds and the specific sound of children sleeping and the drawings pinned to the walls and the stuffed animals perched on bedside tables, and the particular vulnerability of small patients who cannot always communicate what they are experiencing. The pediatric ward at night is its own country. What night shift pediatric nurses describe falls into specific patterns. The imaginary friends who are not imaginary. Children in hospitals, particularly children who are very sick or who are facing long admissions, frequently report the presence of companions that the adults in their lives cannot see. This is not unusual. Imaginary companions are a normal feature of childhood development, but the children in hospitals describe their companions with consistency and a specificity that pediatric night nurses find difficult to categorize as simple childhood imagination. They describe the same figure, not the same figure across different hospitals. The descriptions vary by location, but within a single ward, over time, multiple children who have had no contact with each other describe the same companion in the same terms. In one pediatric ward in the Northeast, whose specific location is not identified here at the request of the nursing staff who shared this account, the companion described by children in the oncology unit over a 15-year period is always the same. An older child, a boy, dark hair, who sits in a chair in the corner of the room and does not speak, but whose presence the sick children describe as comforting. The nurses on that ward, over 15 years, have heard this description from perhaps 30 different children. They have not seen the boy in the chair. Some of them have stopped looking. Some of them, on particularly hard nights, leave the chair in the corner rather than stacking it against the wall the way protocol requires. They do not discuss why among themselves. They do not need to. Every hospital has a basement. The basement is where the morgue is, where the old equipment is stored, where the maintenance systems run, where the laundry processes, where the loading docks receive the supply deliveries that the hospital consumes in enormous quantities every day. Hospital basements are functional, practical spaces, necessary spaces, spaces that are accessed regularly by specific categories of staff. Maintenance workers, morgue technicians, supply chain staff, the people who keep the physical infrastructure of the building running. There are also spaces that night shift workers discuss in the specific, understated language of places that have a reputation. Not a reputation based on stories, a reputation based on a collective, accumulated experience of everyone who has worked in them long enough to develop opinions. The basement of any hospital that has been operating for more than 40 years has held an enormous number of human deaths. The morgue has processed hundreds, possibly thousands of bodies. The building's history, every patient who arrived by emergency, every surgery that did not succeed, every end-of-life transition that happened within its walls, is in some sense concentrated in its lowest level. Whether this has any physical or perceptual consequence is a question that hospital night shift workers, particularly those who work the basement levels, carry with them. Ray Dominguez has been a hospital maintenance technician for 22 years. He works the overnight maintenance shift at a hospital that has been operating since 1931. He is responsible for physical plant, the heating and cooling systems, the plumbing infrastructure, the electrical systems, all of which are largely located in the basement levels. He is in the hospital basement almost every night. He has 3 experiences that he describes publicly. He has more that he does not. The first, footsteps, regular, consistent footsteps moving through the basement corridor that runs adjacent to the original morgue, a morgue space that has not been in active use since the hospital built a new morgue facility in 1987. The footsteps occur regularly between 2 and 4 a.m. They are regular enough that Ray has adjusted his maintenance schedule around them. Not because he is frightened, he is careful to say, but because he prefers to be in a different section of the basement during those hours. The second, doors. 3 specific doors in the basement level that were sealed when the old morgue was decommissioned. These doors are locked. They are not supposed to open. On 4 occasions over 22 years, Ray has found these doors standing open in the morning, unlocked, ajar, when they were locked and closed at the end of his shift. The third, the smell, in a specific area of the basement, in a section that corresponds to the oldest part of the building. There's occasionally, not always, not predictably, the smell of flowers, not chemical flowers, real flowers, the specific sweetness of cut flowers in water, in a basement with no flowers, in a hospital section that has not been actively used in over 30 years. Ray Dominguez does his job. He maintains the building. He does not transfer to a different facility. But he does not go into that specific section of the basement alone. He made that decision in year 3 and has not revisited it. Some hospital workers accumulate a body of night shift experience so extensive, so varied, and so carefully observed that their accounts function almost as a survey of the phenomenon. Patricia Chun has been a night shift nurse for 31 years. She has worked in 4 different hospitals in 3 different states. She has never sought attention for what she has experienced. She agreed to share her accounts on the condition that they be presented factually and without dramatization. I will honor that condition. In 31 years of night shift nursing, Patricia Chun has had 17 experiences that she cannot account for within her clinical framework. She describes them in the following categories: patients who knew the name of a deceased staff member, a staff member who died before the patient was admitted, whose name was never displayed anywhere in the facility, who is known only to long-tenured staff, and who used that name in conversation without explanation, equipment that failed in specific rooms at specific times with regularity that exceeded statistical probability. She kept her own records of these events. The pattern she identified was never explained by biomedical engineering when she presented it. The patient who asked her to say goodbye to someone specific, someone Patricia knew, whose name the patient could not have known, who then died within the hour. This happened twice. The figure she saw in the corridor of a locked ward, a ward that was locked because the patient population required secure containment, standing outside the locked door, not a staff member, not someone she recognized, standing at the locked door and then not standing there. She has 2 accounts that she will not share publicly. She says only that they involve patients who told her something that was confirmed as accurate after those patients had died. She says the content is too personal to the living people involved to share. In 31 years, Patricia Chun has never requested a transfer away from night shift. She has never considered leaving nursing. She says, "You learn after enough years that the hospital at night is its own thing. You learn to work within it. You learn that some of what happens here does not fit the framework we use during the day. You learn to be professional about it." She pauses. She says, "You also learn not to be in room 7 on the east wing alone after 3 a.m. She does not elaborate. Let us step back from the personal accounts for a moment, because there's a body of scientific literature that is relevant to what night shift hospital workers describe, a body of literature that has been building for decades and that represents one of the most serious, least publicized areas of medical research currently underway: the study of near-death experiences, the documentation of end-of-life visions, the research into shared death experiences, where people present at the moment of death report experiences that parallel what dying patients describe. The research is serious. It is published in peer-reviewed journals. It is conducted by researchers at major academic medical centers. It is taken seriously by palliative care specialists who have observed the phenomenon too consistently to dismiss. Dr. Pim Van Lommel's cardiac arrest study, published in The Lancet, followed 344 patients who had been resuscitated after cardiac arrest and documented their account of consciousness during clinical death. The results were extraordinary and have never been fully explained within existing neurological frameworks. The work of Dr. Christopher Kerr at Hospice Buffalo, whose research on end-of-life dreams and visions is the most extensive ever conducted, documents that more than 80% of dying patients report vivid, meaningful visions of deceased loved ones in the weeks before death. These visions are consistently described as comforting. They are consistently described as more real than dreams. And they are, in many cases, described in terms that suggest actual contact rather than psychological projection. The research does not prove anything supernatural. The researchers themselves are careful not to claim that it does. But it establishes, within the scientific literature, that what happens in the minds and experiences of the dying is more complex and more remarkable than the existing framework fully accounts for. Night shift hospital workers know this without reading the research. They know it from 30 years of watching people die, from the patterns they observe, from the conversations they have with patients in the final hours that contain things they cannot explain with the training they received. The science is catching up to what they have known for a long time. A hospital at night has a specific soundtrack. We established this earlier. But within that soundtrack, within the monitor beeps and the ventilator rhythms and the 4 pump alerts and the occasional sound of a confused patient calling out, night shift workers describe a category of sound that does not belong. Not the equipment sounds, not the patient sounds. Something else. The sound of footsteps in a corridor that the security log shows was empty. The sound of a door opening and closing in a room that is unoccupied and locked. The sound of breathing, regular human breathing, in a space where no person is present. The sound of a child's laughter in the adult ward at 3 a.m. The sound of music, very faint, unidentifiable in melody, suggesting something between a lullaby and a hymn that several workers on the same ward have reported independently without ever comparing notes. Marcus Webb has worked the night shift as a hospital orderly for 14 years. He describes himself as a practical person with no particular interest in the supernatural. He describes his job with the matter-of-fact professionalism of someone who has cleaned up every variety of human bodily function and done so without drama. He has heard the music 6 times in 14 years, always in the same section of the ward, always between 2 and 3 a.m., always the same quality, faint, unidentifiable, coming from no specific direction. There one moment, gone the next. He mentioned it to a colleague. After the 3rd time, the colleague did not look surprised. The colleague had heard it too. They have not discussed it further. There is nothing to discuss. There is no resolution available. There is only the sound and the fact of it, and a professional acceptance of a fact that has no clinical category. Marcus Webb says, "You hear a lot of things in a hospital at night that you did not expect to hear. Eventually, you stop expecting not to hear them. The psychiatry ward deserves its own section, because the night shift experience of psychiatry ward staff is distinct from every other hospital environment. The patient population is different. The nature of the experiences being described by patients to staff is different. And the question of what is real and what is a symptom of illness is present in every interaction in a way that it is not in other wards. A patient in a medical ward who describes seeing a deceased relative is describing something that the night shift nurse catalogs carefully in the context of end-of-life care, with a framework of the palliative care literature. A patient in a psychiatric ward who describes seeing something that others cannot see. That is, by definition, something that the clinical framework asks the staff to address therapeutically. And yet, psychiatry ward night shift workers describe something that they discuss among themselves in a specific, careful way of people who are aware that what they are about to say sounds like a clinical case presentation of the people they are treating. The patients who are right, not about their delusions, the fixed false beliefs that psychiatric diagnosis identifies and treatment addresses, but right about the building, right about the room, right about the presence of something that the staff member, standing in the doorway of a patient's room at 3 a.m., listening to a description of something seen in the corner, cannot fully contradict because they have had their own experience of that corner. Sandra Mbeki has worked the psychiatric night shift for 9 years. She is a psychiatric nurse. She takes clinical description seriously, and she takes the framework of psychiatric illness seriously, and she does not confuse patient experience with clinical fact. She says, "There are patients who tell me things about this ward that they cannot know, who describe things in specific rooms with specific accuracy, who are not doing well clinically, who are in acute phases of their illness, but who, in the middle of that, describe something in the east corridor with precision that I recognize because I have seen it too." She is careful here. She says, "I do not know what that means for their diagnosis. I know what it means from my experience." She says, "The east corridor is real. What is in it is real. I see it. They see it. The difference between us clinically is something else entirely. Not everyone stays. For every Patricia Chun who has worked 31 years of night shift and made her accommodation with what the hospital contains after midnight, there are staff who left, who transferred to day shift, who left the hospital entirely, who left nursing or healthcare altogether. In most cases, the reasons given are the standard reasons that healthcare workers leave: burnout, low pay, difficult conditions, the cumulative emotional weight of caring for the sick. but in some cases, discussed quietly in the honest conversations that happen between night shift workers who trust each other. The reason is more specific. Amy Rodriguez worked the night shift in a large hospital for 3 years. She was a dedicated nurse, highly regarded, with excellent performance reviews. She left at the end of her 3rd year. She says, "I left because of what I saw in Roommate on the 3rd night of my 2nd year." She will not describe what she saw in Roommate. She has described it to 2 people in the years since she left, her husband and a therapist. She has not described it publicly and will not. She says, "It was not dangerous. I was not harmed. I was not frightened in the way that people think of fear. I was..." She pauses here for a significant time. "I was made aware of something that I did not want to be aware of. And once you are aware of it, you cannot be unaware." She became a teacher. She works days. She does not work in hospitals. She says she misses nursing. She says she was good at it. She says leaving was the right decision for reasons she cannot fully articulate. She says some buildings know things. Some buildings remember things. The hospital knows too much. After midnight, it stops pretending it doesn't. This section is different from the others. Not frightening. Something else. Because not all of the extraordinary accounts from hospital nights involve things that cannot be explained in frightening terms. Some of them are the opposite of frightening. Some of them are, and this is not a word that medical professionals use lightly, remarkable in ways that suggest something hopeful rather than something dark. The children who recover from illnesses that their medical teams had assessed as unsurvivable. This happens in hospitals. Medicine is imprecise. Prognoses are estimates. Patients exceed what medicine predicted for them. But the specific category of recovery that night shift pediatric workers describe is a recovery accompanied by an account. The child who was not expected to survive the night, who was, by every clinical indicator, at the end, and who, in the morning, was not only alive but improving, and who, when well enough to talk, described what happened during that night, not the medical events, not the interventions, what the child experienced. The accounts vary, but certain elements appear with consistency. A figure, present in the room, accompanying the child through the worst of whatever was happening. The figure is described differently by different children, as a grandparent, as an angel, as simply a person who was there and whose presence was entirely benign. The figure, in almost every account, does not speak, or speaks very little. It is simply present. And in the morning, the child who was not expected to survive is alive. Whether the presence of the figure and the survival of the child are connected is not a question that medicine can currently answer. The night shift nurses who witnessed these nights, who were in the room through the darkest hours, who saw the clinical deterioration, who prepared themselves for the outcome their training told them was coming. These nurses have their own thoughts about the connection. They do not express those thoughts in clinical language. They express them in the private language of people who have seen something at the edge of what medicine knows and have made their peace with not being able to name it. At 7 a.m., when the night shift ends and the day shift begins, there is a handover. Formally, the handover is a clinical communication. Night shift to day shift, patient by patient, clinical status, medications administered, events during the shift, notes of concern. A transfer of professional responsibility documented and witnessed and signed. Informally, in the minutes before the day's shift arrives, in the specific exhausted intimacy of a team that has worked through the night together. There is another handover, not documented, not signed, not in any official record anywhere. The handover of what happened, not the clinical what happened, the other what happened. Room 7 was active again last night. The monitors in room 12 did the thing. Someone was in the west corridor around 3 a.m. We checked, and there was nobody, but the sounds were there for about 40 minutes. Mr. P, he passed at 4:30. He was talking to someone at the end. Not us, someone in the corner. Mrs. T's call light came on 6 times, and she was asleep every time we checked. This handover happens in hospitals everywhere, among night shift workers who have worked together long enough to trust each other with what the night contains. It is never documented. It does not need to be. The people receiving it know. They have been on the night shift long enough to have their own accounts. They add them to the collective knowledge of the ward. They carry it into the next shift and the one after that. This informal, undocumented, consistently maintained body of knowledge about specific rooms, specific corridors, specific times, specific phenomena is one of the most extensive and most serious collections of paranormal observation that exists anywhere. And it exists in every hospital, in every ward, in every city, maintained by the most practically minded, scientifically trained, evidence-based professionals in any workforce who know what they know and who know when to pass it on. Most hospital staff who work nights learn, over time, to accept what the hospital offers without demanding an explanation. Some do not. Dr. Andrew Thornton was a hospitalist physician who covered a night shift at a teaching hospital for 5 years. He is a physician. He operated within a clinical framework that is specifically designed to explain and categorize and treat. He was not comfortable with the unexplained. In his 3rd year of night shift coverage, he began systematically asking his nursing staff about what they experienced at night. Not formally, not as a research project, not with IRB approval. Informally, at the nurse's station at 2 a.m. over terrible coffee. Questions about what they had seen and heard that they had not documented. What they told him. Over weeks of conversations, as the night shift staff became comfortable enough to share, built into a picture that he found simultaneously fascinating and deeply uncomfortable. He attempted to find explanations. He examined the electrical system of the building for sources of electromagnetic fields that might account for perceptual anomalies. He found elevated EMF in several areas of the building, including the East Corridor. He noted that elevated electromagnetic fields have been associated in some research with anomalous perceptual experiences. He examined the ventilation system for carbon monoxide levels that might account for hallucinations. All levels were within normal range. He examined the building's history. The hospital had been built on the site of a previous institution. He discovered, through municipal records, that the previous institution had been an asylum, operating from 1887 to 1943. He is careful about what conclusions he draws from this. He is a physician. He does not draw conclusions as evidence does not support. But he transferred to day shift coverage at the end of his 5th year. He says, I asked the wrong question. The right question was not why does this happen? The right question was, what do you do with knowing it? He says, I didn't have a good answer, so I took the day shift. He does not regret his 5 years on the night shift. He says they taught him something about medicine and about human experience that his training did not and could not. He does not say what specifically that something is. Let's talk about the ones who stayed. Patricia Chun, 31 years. Margaret Sullivan, 28 years. Kevin Oladipo, 11 years. Marcus Webb, 14 years. The people who worked the hospital night shift for decades, who saw what the night shift shows you and did not leave, who found a way to work alongside whatever the hospital after midnight contains. How do you do that? The answer, from everyone who has managed it, is remarkably consistent. You stop fighting the framework. This does not mean you abandon the clinical framework. The clinical framework is what keeps patients alive. It is essential and precise and must be maintained with complete professional integrity, regardless of what else is happening in the building. But you stop insisting that the clinical framework is the only framework. You make room, in your understanding of the building, in your understanding of the work, in your understanding of your own experience, for the things that do not fit the clinical categories. Not with fear, not with the dramatic response that the stories in this kind of account usually center on, with the pragmatic, practical acceptance of professionals who have seen a lot of things and have learned to function in the presence of the things they cannot explain. There is something in hospitals after midnight, multiple somethings, in specific rooms, in specific corridors, in the patterns of equipment behavior and patient experience and staff perception that have been building in the collective knowledge of night shift workers since hospitals existed. The night shift workers who have made peace with this do not claim to know what it is. They do not have a framework that adequately describes it. They do not use words that they are not comfortable using in a professional context. They simply know it is there, and they have learned to do their jobs in its presence. This is, in the end, a form of extraordinary professional competence, the competence of people who face the unknown every night and choose to remain in the building. not because they are not aware of what the building contains, but because the patients need them there, and because sometimes what the building contains is not a threat. Sometimes it is simply the accumulated weight of human experience, of living and dying and everything between, that has been concentrated in this particular place for decades, and you can work in the presence of that. If you are the right kind of person. 4 a.m. The specific character of a hospital at 4 in the morning is different from every other hour of a night shift. At midnight, the night has just begun. The ward is settling into the rhythm of the shift. The patients are at various stages of sleep. The staff are alert, caffeinated, establishing the cadence of the night. At 2 a.m., the night is at its deepest. The patients who are going to have difficult nights are having them. The equipment that is going to behave unusually is behaving unusually. The corridor that is going to be active is active. At 4 a.m., something changes. Night shift workers describe it unanimously and with remarkable consistency. The specific quality of the 4 a.m. hospital, the activity, whatever form it takes, diminishes. The corridor that had footsteps is quieted. The equipment that was alarming has settled. The war achieves a stillness that is different from the stillness of midnight. It is not the stillness of suspension, but the stillness of resolution. Patients who were agitated are calmer. Patients who were in pain often report reduction in pain at 4 a.m. without additional intervention. Patients who were confused achieve clarity. And the staff, who have been awake for 8 or 9 hours, who are in the specific physiological valley of the 4 a.m. circadian nadir, feel something that they describe not as a second wind, but as a specific quality of quiet that the hospital extends to them, as if the building, having done whatever it does between midnight and 4 a.m., has settled, as if the night shift, having been present for it, has earned a specific kind of peace. Dawn is coming. It is not here yet, but the particular darkness of the deepest night is lifting, and the hospital, which has been for 4 hours, fully itself in a way it cannot be during the day, begins its slow preparation for the return of visitors and administrators in the managed, documented, daytime version of its existence. The night shift workers prepare the handover, finish their documentation, drink the last of the terrible coffee, and carry into the morning what the night has given them, as they have every night, as they will every night, for as long as there are buildings that never go dark, and people willing to be inside them when everything else goes quiet. We have reached the end of the shift, not the end of the stories. There are always more stories. There are night shift workers in hospitals right now, tonight, as you listen to this, who are accumulating accounts that will join this body of knowledge, that will be shared in an informal handover, that will be added to collective understanding of what hospitals contain after midnight. But we have reached the end of this particular round. So, what do we do with what we have heard? We could do what the daytime world tends to do with these accounts. File them under explainable, under fatigue-related, under the various clinical and psychological categories that medical training provides for anomalous perception. This is available. It is not entirely wrong. Some of what night shift workers experience is accounted for by these categories, but not all of it. The 47 Colorado State Patrol reports for the truck driver cases, the multiple independent accounts of the same figure in the same hospital corridor, the dying patient who knew the nurse's brother's name and his crisis, the children who described the same companion they could not have heard about from each other, the equipment anomalies that biomedical engineering cannot explain. These things resist the comfortable explanations, and the people who experience them, who are among the most practically trained, most scientifically grounded, most professionally rigorous workers in any industry, are not offering these accounts as entertainment or sensation. They are offering them as observation, as what they saw and heard and experienced in the course of doing a job that the rest of us depend on without fully understanding. What the hospital knows, what the building that never sleeps holds in its walls, in its corridors, in its specific rooms after midnight, is not something that medicine has fully articulated, but it is there, in the cardiac monitor that flatlined and resumed with no physiological explanation, in the footsteps in the decommissioned morgue corridor, in the last words of people who gave specific, accurate messages to the nurses caring for them, in the boy in the chair in the corner of the pediatric oncology room who has been seen by 30 children over 15 years, The hospital knows. The night shift knows what the hospital knows. And in the specific, exhausted, professional, compassionate way of people who chose this work and who show up for it every night. The night shift continues. The monitors beep. The 4-pump cycle. The corridor lights hold their relentless fluorescent vigil. And somewhere on the ward, in room 7, in room 214, in the East Wing corridor, in the basement section that smells of flowers when there are no flowers, something that the daytime world does not see as going about whatever it is doing, as it has been every night since the building first opened its doors. And the night shift will be there, as they always are, the only witnesses to what the hospital knows.